Thank you very much for being here at ABTasty's first Conversion Summit, especially you, Sarah and Manuel.
Thanks for having us.
As you may know, CRO is a fairly new discipline. Not only that, but you kind of need to be a jack of all trades to truly master it. You need a very unique and diverse set of skills coming from backgrounds such as marketing, user experience, front-end development. So it's not easy. And this is why ABTasty wanted to commission this study from Forrester Consulting, so that our clients and our partners can have a reliable benchmark for how companies in the UK, the US, and France are organizing their CRO programs. So today we're not going to dive deep into the study. We're just going to focus on 3 main insights that we're hoping will help you learn something and potentially challenge your own CRO programs. So let's jump into it. So the first main insight from the study is that a great majority of companies say that their CRO program is either extremely valuable or valuable to achieving their organization's strategic goals. So this is really interesting because it shows that companies already see the value of CRO. But also, something that we realized when we kind of took a closer look at the data is that the companies that consider CRO to be really valuable are companies that already have highly formalized processes in place and also a specific CRO team, like a center of excellence. And Forrester defined these companies as forward-thinking companies. So, Sarah, as a conversion rate optimization manager at Assurant, could you please walk us through how your team is organized?
Okay, so I'm American, so if I'm speaking something that's a little hard for you to understand, let me know. We have a team of 4 or 5 people. We work on about 30 sites at any given time, but we manage 1,500 across our entire corporate environment. We operate in 38 countries, and we touch about 500 million customers in a given year. The big thing for us is that all of the skills for CRO sit within our team. So our process and our organization within our team really relies upon all of us being able to fill every role we need. While we do consult out with marketing teams and we consult out with the different lines of businesses, our team was really formed on the basis that we could do everything. And we could be a little consultant agency within our corporate environment, which operates very different than most corporate environments do. And it has really enabled us to return a lot of value very quickly. We're 18 months old as a team, and it's been recognized by people all the way up to our board of directors and our shareholders how valuable CRO has become for Assurant.
And Manuel, as the CEO at Effective Experiments, are there any processes, like CRO processes, that you see as especially effective?
So as you said, companies that have a center of excellence and have formalized processes are more successful. It's obvious in a way because you need structure, you need processes to be able to scale to that level of excellence, to that level of, you're running a lot of tests. If you don't have structure, if you don't have those processes, you have ad hoc, ways of doing things, that falls apart really quickly. You mentioned that 90% of firms say CRO is extremely valuable. What we've also seen, like working with companies across different verticals, is like, yes, there is this excitement about CRO. They think it's extremely valuable. The execution of it varies quite a bit. So what you mentioned, Sarah, is like a good edge case scenario where like these companies are really, they have a core team that's driving it forward. Everyone's still lagging behind in that sense.
And what type of organization do you see most often with your clients, for example, working with different industries?
There's different setups. I mean, you have a global team with satellite teams, or a global team with multiple regional teams. But often we're also seeing a majority of them are still just this 1 or 2 person band running an entire CRO program, sitting somewhere under marketing or e-commerce. That's typically the case right now in these companies that feel it's valuable and they need to do something about it.
So the second main insight from the study is that 94% of firms say their CRO initiatives have increased customer satisfaction. And we actually, like when we took a closer look at the data, we also realized that there is a positive feedback loop between customer satisfaction and revenue. So what do you think about the name conversion rate optimization?
So we've been having a lot of debates about CRO as a term. Like, CRO conversion rate optimization is complete, can I say bullshit? I just said it, so there you go. But yeah, we're not optimizing for conversion rates as much as like business change or organizational change and customer behavior change and customer satisfaction, right? So there's been this internal debate, is it business optimization, is it growth optimization? And I think we reached the end of the debate not really coming up with anything. We're just going to stick with CRO because people know what that actually means. Sort of, but they're not going to stick with, the actual meaning of the word, if that makes sense. But yeah, the word conversion rate optimization, yeah, it's not really the right approach.
And Sarah, how do you communicate about CRO and customer satisfaction and like how do you communicate about this positive feedback loop inside Assurant?
So one of the things we started doing was providing dashboards for all of our internal clients. So we have a bunch of different lines of businesses we work with. We must because of the volume we do. So we send out dashboards that have metrics about tests we're running, tests we're planning on running, things that we have noticed that we can't actually test quite yet because of technological limitations or back-end work that needs to be done. We also send out updates about how we're working on ideation or we're working with another team that may have something that is going to prove valuable on another site because we do work at such a volume that we have a lot of information gathered from a lot of different businesses. So we tend to roll it up and roll it out once a quarter, but we do weekly communications with all of our lines of businesses about how their programs are going and what is going now and tomorrow and a month from now.
And sorry.
I think you mentioned something yesterday when we were having this brief chat about CRO being storytelling. I think that was an interesting point you should elaborate on for the crowd.
Yes. So one of the big reasons we've sold and we've made such an impact at Assurant in 18 months is we tell a story. We don't just give them data. We don't just say, here's your numbers and you guys figure out what that means to you. We go in and we sell it to them. We all have a little bit of a marketing background. We have some reputation management background on our team as well. And the whole thing is we're not just saying, here's a problem, we've solved it, here you go. We're saying, here's a problem, your customers have presented to us, your website is presented to us, the data is presented to us. We've got a few different solutions, we're going to test them out, and at the end of the day, you're going to have an informed way to move your development forward, move your product forward, and to use Bart's reference over there, we've tested everything. And we're able to deliver that in a true story format that can be passed up the chain in a corporate environment because that's what they want, is something quick and fast that they can tell everybody.
Okay, and how do you communicate about what you don't know? And this also kind of like has to do with Bart's talk when he mentioned, the regret percentage. And because CRO is not only about increasing revenue, it's also about learning something about your customers. How do you communicate about this?
Within the organization, so again, a good way is like, making sure that everyone stays informed at all times about what they're learning about the customer, right? So what insights are they gathering? And that could be experiments run, but again, people don't really, in other departments, people don't generally care about anything that doesn't concern them. So showing them stats and showing them like numbers and stuff may not really be that interesting to them, but as you said, stories, or really weaving those numbers into something meaningful to them and how it impacts their work is going to be even more useful and have much more of an impact on them.
Okay. And the third main insight that we got from the study is that most companies, like 29%, see operating their CRO program and interpreting results as a challenge. And on the flip side, they say that one of the main benefits of working with an external vendor, for example, or an agency, is that they have industry-specific best practices. So, in this scenario, how do you decide, for example, when to hire internally and when to work with an external vendor?
Sure. So what we've been seeing as well, as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of companies that are just starting out with CRO. They've just decided, okay, you know, our competitors doing CRO, or we've read about it, we need to set up a team as well. So they then start putting together a team, you know, 1 or 2 people. And what we've seen is that is an ideal time when you need to engage with a specialist agency or vendor. And I say specialist because if you go to a generalist agency, like, you know, that's doing everything under the sun, they're not going to be able to give you something that's specific to your industry or also specific to a CRO. Like conversion optimization is quite a complex process. Like interpreting results is not just like looking at the results and saying, yeah, that's it. You know, in-depth knowledge of statistics, breaking down those results into much more meaningful segments, and then deep diving into those numbers. That comes with experience. And if it's a new team, chances are they may not be that knowledgeable in that sense. So engaging like a specialist agency vendor at that point that can help you with that, but also help you position optimization as a big part of the organization in the early days is always good. Like if you trace back where these people have come from as well, like, you know, these conversion optimizers, they're now the core people in the company. But if you trace their journey back, they were probably as a part of a conversion optimization team with a support structure, so they were just one part of the entire process. They had the comfort of like other people doing stuff for them. And now all of a sudden they're thrust into this position of managing the entire optimization process. And there's this thing, like, you know certain things, you don't know certain things, and then there are things you don't even know you don't know. And that's the dangerous part. Like there are these elements or these knowledge gaps that will cause all sorts of problems. And, you know, having that support structure is really key at that point.
Okay, and Sarah, how do you hire for CRO, given that you kind of need to be a jack of all trades and interpreting the results of CRO can be a challenge?
So one of the ways we tackle this challenge at Assurant is to look at people that have small business backgrounds. So inherently in a small business, you're a jack of all trades. You've got experience working in multiple disciplines, from marketing to development to data analysis, and you've never had a huge team behind you to back you up. Assurant is a huge team. We've got a lot of BAs, we've got a lot of UX talent, we've got a lot of development talent. What we don't have is people that are cross-functional, and that's where our team comes in, so that we can talk the language of each one of those teams. We have experience to be able to communicate to the business, to the developers, and everybody. So we're always looking for people that can also fill those same roles. And in order for our model to work and how we work within Assurant in a relatively boring industry, we have to have people that are very passionate about doing that and being able to enjoy doing all those different roles and doing them well.
And how do you see the relationship between human expertise and technology when it comes to conversion rate optimization?
Big thing for our team and for other teams I've worked with that have done conversion rate optimization is our tools are a starting point. Absolutely a starting point, and our expertise and the voice of our customer and the business goals and everything plays into it. Data is only as good as what you're giving it. You're not going to get anything out of data that you're not able to feed into it. No matter how much AI you run it through, no matter how much processing you do, if you don't teach it to look at a UX environment, if you don't teach it to look at the 1/3 scenario for having children, or you don't teach it that people on a gas website are looking where they can get petrol, you're not ever going to find that in testing. So the human experience is really key to being able to build good tests that are meaningful.
Yeah, exactly. The human element is pretty much key, and it's kind of underestimated sometimes as well. You know, you get like these new AI and machine learning companies coming up and promising you the heaven, really, saying like, you know, you just plug us in and we'll just, you know, print money for you. But they kind of underestimate the human element at the start of looking at the data and also feeding it, as you said. Because if you put garbage in, you get garbage out, right? That's as simple as I can put it. But don't buy into the marketing hype of, you know, a tool is just a tool. It's a facilitator, and it should do certain things for you, but ultimately it still needs your brain, or the human's brain, to function, to interpret that data, to feed it in, you know, the right information as such. So if someone's promising you that, you know, you can remove the human element completely, at least at this stage, I might be proven wrong in 5 years' time, but at this stage, we're not ready for something like an AI to completely replace conversion optimizers or, you know, the human element of it.
And what do you think about the concept of CRO best practices in this case?
Bullshit. Sorry. But yeah, best practices are just like, you know, everyone has something. Like so if you look at the hype cycle, you know the hype cycle, right? So you start off with everyone getting super excited about something, and then they reach this peak and they're like, everything's falling apart, nothing's working the way we were promised, and they go down this valley of sadness or whatever that is, right? But essentially, you know, with best practices as well, if you look at how testing was sold back in 2012, 2013 by companies I shall not name, you have these best practices like, who remembers changing a red button to green will result in higher conversions? I don't know. Yeah, one person remembers that. He probably tested that as well. So, you know, that was what was told, you know, that was how optimization, conversion rate optimization was pitched, right? So those best practices just get growing and growing. We had like these companies doing these case studies, like, you know, this person just changed this small piece of copy and they tripled their revenue. That's basically what it is. It's bullshit, because you can't, that's not how it works in the real world. It takes a lot of understanding of the customer, a lot of really digging into the data, coming up with hypotheses that are going to move the needle. And best practices may be a good thing to look at as a starting point, but if you just look at it and say, okay, here's 10 best practices, let's go and implement it tomorrow. Don't come back crying when nothing works for you. It's as simple as that.
Okay, and to wrap up our discussion, in your opinion, both of your opinions, is there an ideal CRO process or an ideal approach to CRO, or are we still kind of learning, testing and learning from it?
Don't skip the hypothesis. I've seen that happen as well, like people questioning like why we need a hypothesis. And as Bart said, like, you know, if you're coming up with rationalizations and you're testing after it's finished, that's not the right approach. So don't skip the hypothesis, right? Come up with a process that follows at least the way it works, like research. Using research to generate ideas for hypothesis testing, and then, you know, going through that process after that.
One of the things with CRO is just like you're looking at a website. The website is never done. CRO is never done. What you're doing today, you may not be doing tomorrow, you may not be doing next week or 2 years from now. If your website's not done, if your career growth isn't done, why would a CRO process be static and formalized and not have the ability to be flexible for the needs of your organization?
All right. Thank you very much.